Tired of using boring mats that don't look natural? Well, you're in the right place, because today we're going to solve that problem.
Hey crafters! Welcome back to HANDCRAFTED. Today we're diving into the creation of an encounter board packed with detail, a realistic step board. Now, if you remember one of my videos, I built a full ocean board with some waves. You can watch it here if you haven't. By the way, this time we're flipping it over and bringing the opposite side to life with a lush varied grassland. I have a static grass mat, but here's the thing, those mats usually have just one color and texture, which can look a bit flat and unrealistic. So I decided to make my own with static grass, sponge foliage and dirt sections to create more depth, variety and a natural flow. The goal here is to capture the essence of an open steppe, with patches of thicker grass, earthy areas and a few shrubs, making it perfect for your tabletop game. So get your tools ready and let's jump in.
Alright, remember the video I mentioned about the ocean board? Well, I'm using the backside for this project. If you're making this board from scratch, I used a fiberboard measuring 60 by 80 centimeters. You can adjust the size to your preference or even use untreated wood if that works better for you. First, I'm going to use a scrap piece of foam I had lying around to cut some rocks. I will use a sharp X-Acto knife to cut various pieces of different size until I have about 10 to 12 rocks. The exact number will depend on how rocky you want your board to look. For mine, it's just a small detail, so I will try not to overdo it. Once I have the layout planned, I will use hot glue to attach the rocks to the board. Next, I will add small glue patches in certain areas where I want the vegetation to be denser, creating slight elevation and texture. Once the glue is completely dry, I will elevate the board a bit to prevent it from sticking to the table. Now I will coat it with PVA glue, working in sections depending on the board size to keep the glue from drying too soon. First, I will cover the board with coarse sand. Then go over it with finer sand. I will repeat the process on the remaining section. Let it sit and remove any excess sand after a few hours. Once that's done, I let the board dry overnight.
Alright, so if you're enjoying this video, please give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing. It's free for you, but it means a lot to me. Also, if you want to support me and help me afford all the materials and tools I need, you can check out my Patreon. Links are in the description.
With everything dry, I applied a thick coat of black acrylic paint mixed with PVA glue. Take your time on this part and ensure the paints get into all the crevices. Ideally, apply a couple of coats for surface durability and coverage. With the base coat dry, I will paint everything dark brown. It's fine if a bit of black shows through in some spots. We are aiming to cover about 90 to 95% of the surface. Once dry, I will use a makeup brush to overbrush the entire board with a lighter shade of brown. Don't worry about even coverage. Variations will give it a more natural look. For the final highlights, I will do a light foam dry brush. Use a light hand and make sure to highlight the rocks to bring out their textures. Next, I will do a green overbrush on all the hot glue patches. I applied a drop or two of paint directly on them and spread it out with a brush. Then, with a lighter green, I dry brushed these areas to accentuate the glue's texture. Finally, I will dry brush all the rocks with a neutral gray. You can also use a bit of white. I decided to do this afterward, realizing it will help them stand out. I also added some gray on the larger sand grains to add variation on the board. Now it's time to add vegetation. First, I will mix different shades of sponge foliage, as using varied colors creates a more realistic effect. Then I add PVA glue with a little water to form a thick paste. I started applying it with a brush, but that turned out to be inconvenient, so I switched to using my hands while wearing gloves. I spread this paste on all the green patches, pressing it down with my hands to make it adhere well and stay relatively flat. Next is the static grass turn. I spread white glue on the board. distribute it with a brush and use a sifter or applicator if available to sprinkle the grass. This part takes time, so I worked in sections. To add variety, I also sprinkled some rooibos and dried basil. You can check your kitchen for interesting textures. The idea is to have an even distribution. Areas with dense vegetation, less dense patches and some spots where the ground layer shows through. After finishing everything, I waited about 20 minutes for the glue to set partially, then remove all the grass excess. Save what's left over for future projects, even if it's mixed with other materials. Just store it in a separate container than your regular static grass. With everything done, I let it dry for several hours before tickling the board again and tapping it to shake off any loose grass. Now, as I mentioned earlier, I feel the rocks could pop a bit more, so I did a quick white dry brush on them to bring out the contrast. And there you have it! I'm pretty pleased with the result. So let me show you how it looks in action with some scattered terrain. Let's go!
And there you have it, our step board is ready to hit the tabletop. From the different shapes of static grass to the patches of sponge foliage and exposed dirt areas, this board tiles captures the natural varied look we see in real steps. It's ideal for outdoor encounters, wild animal tracking or even a calm campsite. Whatever, it fits your story. If you enjoyed this build, make sure to give this video a thumbs up and drop a comment down below. I would love to know how you use this board in your own game, or if you have any other ideas for terrain boards you'd like to see next. Oh, and if you're looking for hand-drawn maps and adventure models, check out my itch.io page. I've got a bunch of free downloadable content, perfect for expanding your campaigns with unique locations and exciting storylines. So whether you're a game master or a player, there's something there for you to enjoy. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already, and as always, stay creative and keep crafting. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.